the question of the administration of justice is more than just a business enterprise. It's
Of
more
course.
complex.
Of course.
And do you think that you have the capabilities to address all the concern, given that you have never had any experience in the judiciary?
In terms of management and administration, I think my experience in management could help me out in that. If, as from my information, there are about 22,000 employees in the judiciary, from top to bottom, and 2,000 of which 2,000 are judges, or actually doing the work of judges. It's really not that much.
Thank you, Attorney De Castro. Now, moving on. You mentioned that you have been working with the mining sector. Do you believe that the court has overstretched its mandate when it implemented rules that pertain to particularly the writ of kalikasan? What are your views on this?
The writ of kalikasan is also an implementation of a constitutional policy to protect the environment for future generations, as laid down in the principle of in its decision in the Oposa case. And I think the role of the Supreme Court in terms of protecting the environment should be retained and actively pursued.
Thank you, ma'am. My final question. What is your judicial philosophy on gender equality and gender discrimination? And do you think that our courts have been able to achieve gender equality now?
I think still trying. But you know, I grew up in an environment where there was no gender equality. My mother was not allowed to go to college because my grandfather believed that only guys or his boys could go to college. So I grew up in an environment where my mother insisted that her daughter should have equal rights as her sons. So that's how I came to be what I am now. So I am for gender equality, but in my experience, there's always a glass ceiling for women. Whether you like it or not, it appears invisible until you're on that particular level when you have to go to the top. And I think this is also one of my objectives, to find out whether in the judiciary there is also that glass ceiling that is invisible.
Could you be more specific as how you could promote, how you expect to promote gender equality in the event that you become Chief Justice?
All applicants for the judiciary should be equally evaluated. They should undergo the same rigors of application, interviews, and credit and background checking, all the same. No discrimination whatsoever. Because the way, from my personal experience, I made it a point that nobody should carry my bag just because I'm a woman. I should walk like the other men when they go to work. No special treatment, because that is the cost of equality.
And I'm sure you look forward to the day that we would have a lady Chief Justice. With that, ma'am, I end my questions. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Attorney Mejia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Attorney Kagampang De Castro.
Good morning.
Mayroon po tayong note dito na may mga humihiling na itanong yung ibang katanungan sa Tagalog para maintindihan daw ng ordinaryong mamamayan. Pipilitin po namin.
May note lang ako ay Bisaya, ha?
Pwede rin po siguro sa Bisaya.
Sige, sige.
Okay.
Halo-halo.
Ugnay po, no? Or I would like to take off from where Attorney Cayosa left off. Gusto ko rin pong itanong, pinag-uusapan po kanina yung gender sensitivity. Kailangan po ba magkaroon talaga ng gender perspective o pananaw sa kasarian o may kaugnayan sa kasarian, gender perspective in deciding cases? Should there really be a gender perspective in deciding cases, to your mind po?
Ang ibig sabihin, kesyo ang litigant ay babae, iiba ang view mo. Siguro, in a sense, when it involves sex crimes maybe or violence against women. Pero in other aspects, dapat pareho lang. Kaya siya babae, pareho mang emotions yan eh. Pareho namang problema niyan eh. Parehong nagagalit, parehong umiiyak. Pero kung crimes against women, siyempre iba yun.
Thank you po. Attorney Cagampang de Castro, should you be appointed as Chief Justice? No? Kung kayo po ay mahihirang bilang punong mahistrado, mayroon na lamang pong malalabing 3 taon upang kayo ay magsilbi bilang Chief Justice. No? There will only be 3 years for you to serve as Chief Justice. How do you intend to make an impact within those 3 years that will be left for you to serve po?
It means I will just work double time, meaning instead of reviewing the entire organization for maybe a year, I'll do it in 3 to 6 months by inviting expert consultants. I will abbreviate the processes, the preparatory processes, so that if there's any change or reform that is needed or improvement that is needed, it could be implemented as soon as possible.
How will you characterize the level of corruption po, or the perceived corruption in the judiciary, and what will you do to address it?
Of course, I am an outsider, and as you said, these are only perceptions because it's very difficult to establish. But we just hear it from complaints of clients or from party litigants, not your clients, and even fellow lawyers. They complain about this or that. And I think the problem of corruption has been there with us for ages. And we need a long-term solution to that. And I think I could start now. I have been an educator for, at least in law school, for 11 years. And after that stint in UP for 11 years, I've been teaching in almost all the other downtown law schools. Out of curiosity, really, because I wanted to know what quality of education, legal education, is there outside of the more famous schools. And I thought that there is a need to go back to the teaching or imbibing of values, especially for lawyers. Now, the problem with many lawyers that are not full-time students or who were not full-time students, that they come from work, they go to their classes unprepared, and they don't have the preparedness for law school. Because every time I ask a question, it's very difficult for them to comprehend. Either they lack the proficiency in English, they don't understand, or they're simply unprepared, or their pre-law preparation has been quite inadequate. I was so surprised because I was brought up in the humanities. I had an AB with all the humanities. So we had ethics, we had logic, and then we had philosophy. But many of these law students now, especially the working ones, they have already their own careers. And you find out that they are professionals in their own right, but they did never have logic or ethics in philosophy. So these are the basic values, the subjects that imbibe, that teach you the values to be good lawyers. So maybe if from the outset we prescribe, the Supreme Court to prescribe that to be able to qualify for law school, you should have taken all the subjects, some humanities subjects, then that's already a step forward to improving our law students and eventually lawyers. This is the value system. And then we should have continuing training in law school in ethics. Just don't relegate ethics into the background. One unit on the last semester of law school, as if it is really nothing. And then in the bar subjects, in the bar exam, it's combined with legal forms. I mean, what kind of message do you put on the importance of ethics? Practically nothing. It's with legal forms. And so maybe if you revise a little bit the law curriculum as well as the pre-law admission requirement to law school, wherein you put in the element of the ethical conduct of lawyers to be, or simply human beings. Maybe we could improve on the long term, of course. This is a long term, the effect of that is long term. In the same way that corruption has been a long term problem in this country. So maybe we could start with that. That is from the field of education, of course.
Thank you po. That's my final question, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you po, Attorney Kagampang.
Thank you.
Justice Lagman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Attorney De Castro, good morning.
Thank you.
I was reading your personal data sheet, and I noticed that you are 67 years old.
Yes.
Now, I also noticed in your data sheet that from 2000, you were an active partner in your law office before, up to 2011.
Yes.
Right? And starting last year, it is indicated here that you are now the consultant or of counsel
Yes.
of
The same law firm?
the same
Yeah.
law firm.
Actually, it's the same law firm.
Meaning, I interpret it that you are now
Retired, more or less.
not
It's
exactly
really-
semi-retired, but you are taking a less active role
Yes.
in your law office. So I am just wondering, what motivated you to apply for the post of Chief Justice, considering that this position entails not only that this position is not only a full-time job, but a back-breaking job as well.
At 67, I have only 3 years.
Yes.
Yes, to 70.
Yes.
It's never too late to do something
Yes, I agree
substantial.
with you. I agree with you. But my worry is that, how about your health? Can you handle the full-time job of a Chief Justice? You have to go to the office every day, from morning up to late evening, and you have to not only to attend to the cases assigned to you, raffled to you, but you have to be the chief executive officer of the court.
Yes, I know.
Something like that. So it's a full-time job, and I'm just wondering, you are now seen for 1 year. Your role in your law office is, I think, it's a part-time.
Yes, basically I've been involved I have 2 books in line, so I still work up to the wee hours
But in
of the
the-
evening
at
on
the-
my own time.
In your
That's the
own time
difference.
and in the house.
Yes.
If you want to relax, you can relax anytime.
That's
but as
right.
the Chief Justice, even if you want to relax, you cannot relax because of the volume of your work.
Yes,
So
that's
do you
right.
think you can handle that?
I think so.
How is your health, Attorney De Castro?
I think I have a medical. I have undergone medical examination, and if I believe the doctors,
Yeah, what did they say?
they say I'm fit to work. So, because actually I was really waiting for the medical exam, because if the results would say not fit to work, then I would probably just stay put.
Okay, so did you tell the doctor that you are applying for the post of Chief Justice?
I didn't have to tell them.
But
I think they're ready.
You will just use that certificate for purposes of...
No, they didn't know that.
I see.
Actually, I There are 3 pages in my laboratory.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just 1 page, I said everything. So in Makati Med, they call it 23 something. So
Yes.
it's all the works.
So,
I wanted to be sure because, I have to be fair to you.
yes. And to
I have
yourself
to-
also. And to your family.
Yes. I have to be fair.
Okay. So on that note, I have no more question for Attorney De Castro. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
Attorney
thank
De
you.
Castro. Good luck.
Justice Hermosissima, sir.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Professor. Uh, are you familiar with the writ of Kalikasan, the writ of Amparo?
Yes, the writ of Kalikasan refers to you can apply for it if you want somebody to stop damaging the environment. I think that's what they resorted to in Zamboanga to stop mining there. And then the writ of Amparo is if somebody is lost or you suspect of being taken by the military, it's almost like it's a relative of the writ of habeas corpus.
On what basis did the Supreme Court promulgate and issue these writs? Or would you rather have these writs passed in Congress?
No, I think it's in the proper place in the Supreme Court. To me, it's like an emergency situation when you resort to these writs. And if you have to wait for Congress, I think many people will have to deliberate on it, and it will take time.
Considering the unmitigated proliferation of deaths caused by violence of judges, journalists, and other private individuals, are you in favor of the revival of the death penalty law?
I think if you have a criminal committing such heinous crimes, death is too merciful for him. I think a life sentence would be better, so he could really feel how it is. Death would be, there is a prayer about death. It's a release. Death is a release from all the travails of this life.
Anyway, do you believe that the extreme penalty of death is a deterrent to the commission of such crimes as murder, parricide, rape, and kidnapping?
Not necessarily, because for a long time this has been an issue whether death penalty should be adopted or done away with. And from my personal point of view, it's only the Creator that created life that could take away life. And from the pragmatic point of view, making a criminal suffer in prison would be a better alternative than death.
Will you not change your mind if you consider the fact that quite recently the Federal Supreme Court of the United States upheld the constitutionality of the death penalty? This in spite of the opposition of American bishops to the imposition of the penalty of death. 4 Catholics in the court voted in favor of the imposition of the death penalty.
Maybe,
What do you say?
Maybe they affirmed their that they are in favor of the death penalty under the particular circumstances of their society. Because maybe in U.S. society, it's now quite difficult to control, considering the freedom, the extreme freedom that people are allowed to exercise, and are very difficult to control. Maybe that's the reason for their change of heart with respect to death penalty.
That will be all,
Thank you.
Mr. Chief. Thank you very much.
Congressman Topas will no longer ask question. It's now the turn of Secretary Mosngi.
Thank you, Chair. I think my questions have already been propounded. I am satisfied with the answers. I have already enough to form an opinion. I give it to the Chair, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Attorney De Castro, what is your inclination? Resolve the issue for the common good, or resolve the issue in favor of what you know and believe is just and right? Is it between common good or just and right? What is your inclination?
You know, if you're in the judiciary, your task is to dispense justice, and justice is supposed to be blind. The question of common good is a pronouncement of policy. And if you're in the judiciary, your task is not to pronounce policy, but to distribute or dispense justice. You have a rule of law, you have a set of facts, then you decide what rule will apply to a set of facts. But for the question of common good, although it's also used in our Constitution, it's a question of, the issue is policy. It's more addressed to the legislators, because they will have to determine whether something that they will adopt as law is for the common good. So I think in our system of government, where there are different branches of government, they have specific spheres of authority and power. The judiciary's task is to dispense justice.
Okay. Now, aside from the qualifications, general qualifications provided in the Constitution, independence, probity, integrity, and probity and integrity, no? Are there other independence? Are there other traits and virtues that a candidate should possess in order to be an effective Chief Justice?
I think the Chief Justice should also be humane, because he or she is not only a dispenser of justice, but being a head of office, he or she has to be an administrator. And you know, you have employees, justices are also people, judges are people, they have their own wants and needs, and they work for a living. And that's why you have to be humane. You don't dispense justice to your employees, even if you're in an organization. You try to reach their needs, to feel for them. And that's the difference between an associate justice who is charged with making decisions, dispensing justice, writing all these, evaluating facts, applying the law, and a Chief Justice who is also an administrator and a manager.
Must also be a good administrator.
Of course.
Okay. In fact, he is the chief administrator of the Supreme Court.
Looks like.
Most likely. Now, you will be coming from the outside, assuming that you are appointed Chief Justice. How would you lead the Supreme Court? Because you are coming from the outside. And how will you deal and lead with 14 justices of the Supreme Court?
I don't have to deal or lead the justices of the Supreme Court, because they themselves are leaders. We will be coordinating with each other. We will be cooperating, and we will be working together. The leadership of the Chief Justice lies in running the machinery of the judiciary. smoothly and efficiently as possible. I am sure there are problems of employees, their salary structure, the wages structure, and their tenure of office. I'm sure there are lots of problems. And procurement and equipment, those would be the details. And probably you have to evaluate whether there's a need for delegation of powers, considering that it's quite decentralized. You know, all those details. So that makes a difference between being a Chief Justice and a Justice.
Were you involved in the past as head of an association or a body?
I was Executive Vice President for Legal and Audit of Benguet Corporation.
Oh.
And I resigned with the position of CEO.
CEO, that means
Chief Operating Officer.
Chief Operating Officer. When was that, Attorney DeCastro?
I retired at the age of 55 in 1998. I
1998.
was there for 16 years. So I rose from the ranks as group manager, and I dealt with labor unions, collective bargaining agreements with miners, and strikes and whatever, almost everything.
You are related to Attorney DeCastro?
Which one? There's so many.
The older one. The older one.
The older one.
Arturo
Arturo?
DeCastro, yeah.
He's my husband.
Your son is also Arturo.
Yeah, actually, I have 3 children who are lawyers, and so I have spun off our conjugal partnership, the law office, into a law firm with my children. That's why I was able to, retire since last year. But I'm still, I have to advise them, so they phase in.
Okay. Any other? Okay, that's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you also for coming. Okay.
Thank you,
ma'am.
Congressman
Thank you, ma'am.
Tupas.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Natunghayan po natin ang naging maikling interview dito sa sumunod na nominee sa pagkapunong mahestado. Siya ay si Attorney Soledad Cagampang de Castro, isa pong law professor for 11 years sa UP Law School at nagturo rin siya sa iba't ibang mga paaralan.
Medyo hindi siya kilala dahil hindi po siya humawak ng isang posisyon sa gobyerno o hindi po siya naging juez, pero matagal siya naging practicing attorney at matagal din po siyang naging naging professor of law. Yung mga anak niya daw po ay puro abogado. She spent some time in the private sector as a lawyer at umakyat din po siya in the corporate ranks taking on various legal positions as she was going up. So, kasi hindi na gaanong nagtanong ang ibang panelists sa kanya, marahil ang katanungan talaga is her fitness